This is Open Mic. Glad to be back here with you. But before we start our program, I just want to highlight to St. Lucians very briefly that I've had to take a couple of weeks off to address some major surgery in respect to myself, and also to put a couple of St. Lucians on notice, because there are many people suffering from back problems today and have never been able to address the problem. And as a matter of fact, I don't want to mention names, but 3 or 4 of our top politicians in the last year and a half have had to go to Cuba and elsewhere to address those problems. But I'm glad to be back. It has been a tough period for me, but the situation has worked out, and I want to say thank you to the good Lord. Now, my guest today is Miss Mary Isaac, well known to everyone else. And we are going to get straight to the point because we have many subjects to deal with. Much has transpired in my 6 weeks absence from St. Lucia. And I'm going to pose a couple questions to Mary, but to let her deal with. Catching up on the political agenda of the United Workers' Party, it would appear that some crucial meetings have transpired, including your endorsement for Castries South. Can you highlight the process in light of the rumblings from your opponents within and without? My other questions will follow, but I want to deal with that issue because there has been a lot of discussion how the United Workers' Party handles their affairs, when in fact the little that I know is that the United Workers' Party tried to run a very democratic process, and people can probably misinterpret democracy within the party to dictatorship. So on that score, I will ask Mary, first of all, to give me a little brief history of what happened to her when that took place. Mary.
Well, thank you very much for having me. The process is very transparent, and I'm very happy that I went through that process. It is one where you as a member of the party can apply, you write, indicating your interest to run a certain constituency, right? To represent a certain constituency. And what happens is that request is taken up at different levels. First, your constituency level, they take it in and submit it to the national executive. The national executive do their due diligence and takes it to, and then you are invited to come to an interview. You are interviewed by the people of the constituency branch, right? And after that interview, they interview everyone that apply, that show an interest, that write showing an interest. And after that, then you are informed whether you will be presented
or not.
Right, you will be, based on your interview, if you will be presented to the constituency branch, and that is where the constituency branch gets the opportunity to vote as to whether they want that person, who is it that they want, if there are more than one people who have written to represent that constituency.
I don't want to go through it at length, but I think for the sake of clarification purposes, in your case, there were rumors concerning, I think, was it Mr. Francis who was here, that he was not informed or something. Can you just highlight very briefly what really transpired?
Okay, as far as I am aware, we were both informed. Actually, all 3 of us were informed. They were 3 applicants.
Okay.
And the youth applicant, Mr. Averill, he dropped out. He wrote and indicated that he no longer is interested in continuing through the process.
Right.
So the interview was done. I was interviewed, and I was informed that Mr. Francis was also interviewed. He was also informed of the date that the selection process, the selection itself would take place at the Cicerone Secondary School.
Right.
And so he was expected to be there the night of the selection, but apparently he chose not to be there. But I was informed that we were both informed, and they actually waited a few more minutes for him, and people started calling him and so on. And he was in touch with the very same people who were organizing the whole, the whole selection. So he was very much aware, and his name was on the ballot. The ballot had both names, my name and his name. His name was on top, and mine was at the bottom, I believe. I can't really.
You know, it's rather unfortunate because The United Workers' Party, as you know, has been totally restructured, and I think they do try in their best way to do things professionally. So it's unfortunate, but I think I want St. Lucia to know very clearly that what is going on, so there are no misconceptions of what the situation is. I'm going to not to dwell any further on that point. The next question, now, you know, there are many, for instance, rumors around that the United Workers' Party are not ready and all that kind of thing, they're in disarray. Yet I noticed a couple nights ago that there were 7 endorsements to the party. Now I realize at this point in time, unless other things take place, there are 17 seats that we know. So another 10 endorsements to come.
Right.
And I'm not privy to disclose, but I have heard some very strong names mentioned who are likely to be endorsed quite shortly. I don't expect you to reveal the business of the party now, but can you just highlight on where the party is going for the next endorsements? What's it?
Well, I cannot, because there are so many left to be endorsed, and in some of the cases there's more than one candidate person showing interest.
Okay.
So that means that takes a longer time because the process then becomes longer.
Right.
But I believe that we have a few of the other constituencies who may be ready by next month. We should have one or two.
Yes.
And hopefully it will keep going on that way. But people are just putting their house in order.
Yes.
Some of the constituencies have more people offering, you know, a lot of people. There's a place with 5 people.
Yeah.
So, you know, they have to go through the process, and that takes time.
Because of the democratic process you are adhering to, it takes maybe a little bit longer to deal with that.
Right. So now, everything is you know, on track, and we'll get there at the right time.
Now, Mary, another situation which came to my attention because I've been away and I've just heard about it through the grapevine. The recent controversy at Parliament between the Speaker and the former Communications Minister has certainly gripped the attention of the nation. How do you read what transpired?
Well, I sort of saw something like that going to happen sooner or later.
Yes.
Because when you look at Parliament, you see the bias, right? In a situation where you're supposed to have a Speaker that is more or less neutral, or that is there to maintain order. I cannot recall any time when that Speaker has ever cautioned or gotten involved in the Labour parties on the other side.
Yes.
You know, so much so the way that he does with the United Workers' Party side, with the opposition side. It's almost as though in most cases you see where you can almost see the interference or trying to prevent a person from trying to make a point that they want to make. So I sort of expected something like that to happen. Or you may have a situation where the opposition decide, since we are not being given the opportunity to make our point, we will just not make any point at all.
Because, you know, when people talk of disrespect to the House and so forth, I'm not here to criticize either party. But we should recall that when Dr. Anthony was in opposition, he referred to the party as a bunch of renegades, and he walked out and so forth. You know,
kinds of things.
Politics can be a very volatile profession, and people have to understand, especially when you're in the minority and you're not allowed to make a point, people can get very upset and uptight. And I think as grown-ups, everybody talks about respect for the House, but I think it's high time that, you know, both parties realize that they are there representing the people of St. Lucia, and they should be allowed to make their point. You know, for instance, the questions which were eventually answered by, I think, a lady called Miss Jean, what's her name?
Yeah, she's the permanent secretary of the Ministry of
Now, she
Infrastructure.
came on the air. Now, many people in St. Lucia are saying, well, the same way she responded to that, why the minister, the present Minister for Communications, or for that matter the Prime Minister, if they were familiar with the contract, could in fact responded to Mr. Guy Joseph, the Honourable Guy Joseph, of his concerns. Anyway, that's water under the bridge for now. But what I'm taken back much by is 2 or 3 nights ago, as a result of that, the negative ad which I see that the present government is putting about Honorable Guy Joseph. Now, people are free to put their ads because both sides do it. But, you know, the timing seems wrong, and I find it brings out a sign of weakness, a sign of hatred, a sign of bitterness, and it's wasting time and money to see this nonsense being put on the screen. And let me say to the St. Lucia Labour Party that those ads are actually hurting their reputation, because I have discussed it with many people. Even some SLP people felt they have gone too far with it, and it should be stopped. But again, you know, elections, some people say around the corner, some people say the end of next year. The Prime Minister knows when he's going to call his elections. But that having been said, we need to raise the level of everything else as far as that is concerned.
Not only are the ads distasteful, and I really am not in any position to say to them, stop running it. The more they run it, maybe the less popular they will become, and that will be to our advantage. But there are people in the ads, there are some names that they are showing in the ads that are not related to Guy Joseph at all, but they're making it seem as though it is Guy Joseph's relatives. And then when you have to ask yourself, if the Labour Party has so much information on Guy where he did so many things wrong, why don't they take it up in the courts? Why don't they do what it is they're supposed to do so that he can be, so that they can sanction him somehow, if that information is truthful? So you see again where they are trying to mislead the public and trying to tarnish somebody's reputation, which is what they do very well.
Yeah, they are masters of that.
You understand?
But you know, these things can happen for only a certain length of time, until such time that it will backfire. Now, since my return to St. Lucia, I have had the opportunity to pass at one or two watering holes, and people have called me, all very, very concerned about the level of borrowings in St. Lucia. And you know, I think one of the reasons why people in St. Lucia are more so concerned, because CNN is in our living room morning, noon and night. And the whole situation in Greece is a very worrying situation. I think it was a couple nights ago, I think it was listening to Timothy Polion or one person in his show, and who made a very valid point and saying, you know, when governments go out and borrow all that money, they actually borrowed in the name of the people of St. Lucia. Has anyone sat back and done a calculation as to how much each St. Lucian is responsible for, debt-wise, if you take the whole debt of St. Lucia today? It was done last week in Greece, and it's $37,000 US that every Greek citizen is responsible for, based on the debt. And the controversy in Greece today is the fact that the various governments are saying, well, or the people are saying, this is a debt created by politicians. Why do we have to suffer, line up at the bank to get 60 euros, and we are totally displeased about it? And we need to learn from other countries like Greece what the situation is, because that can easily happen in St. Lucia, because we have been talking about the borrowing and borrowing. You know, sometimes when I look at Parliament and I hear the Minister of Finance talk about getting a $250 million loan from Saudi Arabia or Kuwait and so forth, I sit and ask myself, do they realize it's a loan? It's not revenue, you know, we're talking about. We're talking about a loan which has to be repaid.
Plus
and
interest.
To be able to pay those loans, you have to keep flipping over your old finances to be able to comply with what is going on. And most times, when you actually borrow again, you're borrowing at a higher rate, which is every day the cost of the indebtedness of St. Lucia is creeping up. I have not done the figures myself. It was just whispered to me that if we do a calculation between March of 2015 and July, between the borrowings that took place and the old debt which was flipped over, it is now pretty close to $700 million. That is frightening. Mary, we have touched on a few subjects. I've been given a sign that we have come to the end of the first segment of our program. We'll be right back.